Hello everybody, my name's Tom and I'm back with my final thoughts ahead of the British Grand Prix, and it's a little bit earlier than usual. Normally my final thoughts video would go out on a Friday evening after we've had the first couple of practice sessions. However, I am actually busy this weekend seeing friends and stuff, and I'm actually going away to see some friends, so there won't be any opportunity this weekend, but I did want to throw out something else for you to hook onto before the weekend and just give my roughly final thoughts ahead of the Silverstone weekend. So I'm going to talk about where I'm sort of pondering. As you can see, kind of the headline thoughts on screen at the moment, I'm going to discuss through this, and then we'll have a quick look at my actual team and just kind of give my final thoughts on that, and then I'll say cheerio and I'll see you in a few weeks for Spa pretty much. So yeah, let's get into it then. So I think one of the main topics of late has been what to do with that second constructor slot. And now I will be talking about the Sauber option, as you can see on screen, slightly further on the video in a few minutes' time. But I do want to talk about Mercedes versus Ferrari, because I do think Red Bull are kind of just not really in the conversation. So I'm not really going to focus at all on Red Bull. I think they're kind of out of the conversation, particularly as Tsunoda's struggling so much. It's just clearly... it's just clearly better at the moment to pick a Mercedes or Ferrari if you're going for that double A tier constructor slot. So recently, Ferrari seemed to have the edge. I say recently, in the last race anyway, because before that we had Canada, where obviously Mercedes had the edge. Now this week we're going into Silverstone, which is a track which historically, the previous few years, Ferrari haven't done particularly well at. Obviously, I did have the Carlos Sainz win here 2-3 years ago, whenever it was, but more heavily favoured to Mercedes in recent history, of course. Last time out, we had Lewis Hamilton win at Silverstone. Something that I'm sort of considering is the fact that the temperature is going to be lower. We're looking at 20-21 degrees, and now it's kind of funny to me that over the past sort of, couple of years maybe, temperature has kind of been talked about a little bit loosely with Mercedes, and it's come up every now and again, but now we've seen massive pattern, and now everyone's talking about it. Temperature. When it's cool, Mercedes excel, and it is going to be cooler than what we're used to seeing, certainly cooler than what we saw in Austria. So does that favour Mercedes over Ferrari? Potentially, but something that also been keeping an eye on is Mercedes tyre degradation in the high speed. And obviously Silverstone is a high speed circuit, lots of high speed turns, and I do wonder, are they going to suffer with a degradation? I don't know exactly, because we haven't really seen too much of high speed action from them, and full out sort of high speed circuits of late, because we've seen Austria is not really high speed apart from sector 3, which I'm going to talk about, as you can also see on screen, and then we had before that Canada, there's no high speed. So yeah, it's been a while since we had any high speed, since Mercedes have brought upgrades. So it'll be interesting to see in the practice sessions what their degradation, what their race pace looks like. So something to keep an eye on. The other thing I want to talk about, I suppose I might as well talk about it right now, actually, because I've already kind of touched on it and pointed out the Sector 3 times here from F1 Big Data over on Twitter, a great account to follow for all sorts of useful data over on Twitter. I have pulled out Sector 3. This is Sector 3 from Austria in the previous race. I'm sure most of you are aware that Sector 3 is the mostly just high-speed corners. That's why I pulled it out. And I know Silverstone isn't just entirely high-speed. It's not like Qatar where it's just full-on high-speed, but it is the predominant feature of the track, along with some straights. But I wanted to look at the high-speed to see who was actually strong there. And obviously the McLarens are just ridiculously good. A couple of tenths faster than everyone else. But the Ferrari is actually edged slightly, only by about a tenth to 2 tenths ahead of Mercedes of Russell. And again, this could well be, this is average sector times, not the fastest, is average sector times. So this could take into account the fact that Russell and his Mercedes did suffer with the heat, and the Ferraris kind of excelled in it, so that we might see some differences coming into Silverstone. But also very keen to point out the strength of the Saubers there. And I know we're only talking a tenth or whatever, but look at the likes of Bortoleto, who was pretty much on par with a Mercedes and only a tenth behind the likes of Hamilton in the Ferrari that finished fourth. Hulkenberg, matching that to back up the fact that the Saubers do look good in the high speed. So certainly one to watch this weekend, and I'll just discuss that in a minute when we get on to Sauber themselves. But yeah, just kind of food for thought that high speed performance does matter this weekend. So let's move on. We got Ocon and Bearman. Because, my team selection video earlier on in the week, my initial thoughts were just Ocon looks like a bit of a no-brainer. And I still think I'm leaning towards Ocon for my Team 1. I'm probably going to split the difference between my Team 1 Team 2. Whatever I do so far this season, Team 2 seems to work out. So Team 2 is probably going to go Bearman, Team 1 is going to go Ocon. So probably Bearman's the right answer in that case. But anyway, that's kind of more budget dependent, but budget issues for my team too. That's why I'm going that way. But yeah, it is it is an interesting versus between Ocon and Bearman, because when you look at their stats, they're very, very similar. Very similar. Positions gained, as you can see, from Ocon 4th on the grid, Bearman 2nd, so positions gained is great. They're not qualifying well, they're moving up. That's fantastic, particularly if it's going to be a wet race. Maybe that'll be good for them, for both of them. Overtakes, again, very similar. Bearman top of the grid for average overtakes this season so far, very impressive. Ocon also doing well in the top half. Average points, again, very similar. And then perhaps the most important thing maybe is that Ocon only needs a 0 point to go up the maximum, whereas Bearman needs 4 points. And now you might not think that's a big difference, because particularly when you got people in this budget region scoring like 20 plus points for the last few weeks, like Hulkenbergs, your Bortolettos, your Alonsos that keep scoring these big points. But that's quite a rare thing and a bit of an unusual aspect to fantasy scoring that we've seen of late. I would expect it to be more common that these drivers do score like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 points or something. So the fact that Ocon only needs a 0 pointer, whereas Bearman needs 4, does lean me slightly more towards Ocon, sitting on that 20 pointer as well from the last race, whereas Bearman, I can't remember exactly what it was. Was it like a 10 pointer or something? I can't remember. 10, 14, I can't remember. But either way, I do think it edges me slightly towards Ocon. Although that said, Ocon doesn't have a particularly good record around Silverstone. He's not done well here in recent past. So practice sessions will be really key to see exactly how confident he's looking. If he's looking really confident, looks assured, he hasn't spun off a couple of times or whatever, then I'll probably back him with my team one. But if he's looking shaky, if he goes off, anything like that, everything that, and with the interviews that come out and on the Friday evening, where it's like what the team said on the, is always a good thing to look out on the F1 app, or whatever, or just catch some quotes on Twitter, etc. If Ocon comes out and he's like, I'm not feeling comfortable with the car, blah blah blah, then I'm probably looking towards Bearman at that point. But if he sounds confident, if he looks confident, I'll probably go Ocon. So that's kind of where my thinking is at the moment. I do put quite a lot of weight into what the drivers say. So yeah, I will be looking at driver quotes and stuff to see what's going on top of their practice performance. So yeah, still in the balance there, Ocon versus Bearman. Next up, we've got the Saubers. I have already talked about the Saubers doing good in the high speed around Austria. They have averaged 41 points over the last 3 races, which is quite unusual, because before that they were struggling to get into double digits. So obviously we've had the upgrade, we've had the technical directive as of Spain. Those things have kind of coincided and boosted their performance right up, and they've been doing really well in the last few races. Now, the F1 Fantasy tools over on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see I've put a couple of teams up there. It only, with the weighted average, even with the weighted average, with them performing well recently, it still only has them predicted at 18.2 points, which is not a lot. And that's actually probably what I'd more expect them to get. I would, if I had to put money on, I'd say they'd probably score 20 to 25 points this weekend. So yeah, the fact that they're at 18.2 is more realistic compared to the 41 points average that they've been having over the last 3 races. I don't anticipate them to keep that up. I don't think they'll be a million miles away from it, but I think 20 to 30 is just much more reasonable and expected as the variance kind of levels out over time. But it does open up opportunities for 3 times DRS on Piastri and Norris. I think, particularly if you're struggling for budget and you can squeeze to that to get that 3 times usage in early, then fine. I think it's okay. But I personally, with my budget being okay, will probably just wait until a sprint towards the end of the season, where budget is going to be like not really a factor anymore. We can comfortably afford something like a Piastri and a Russell on top of 2 big constructors, 3 times Piastri, 2 times Russell, and don't really think much more about it and just take your points. So I'm probably not going to go down the path of 3 times DRS in Spa, which is the race following Silverstone, but it's something to bear in mind. I think some people will go there, and I think it's still fine. Curiously, if you look at the F1 Fantasy tools on the right-hand side, you can see the expected budget gain from both. You expect going B-tier constructor will boost you up over the A-tier constructor, because they get 0.6 instead of 0.3, but predicted difference here is actually favouring the more templatey team with the Ferrari constructor in there, mainly because Norris is expected to drop in price again. So maybe come Spa that will reverse. Particularly on the sprint weekend, it'll be easier for Norris to get that points per million threshold, and you'll probably get a bit more budget out of your assets. But it is still important to note that this triple kick Sauber team, and yes, you can throw an Alonso in there, you can put whoever you want kind of in there, they're going to gain 0.6 most likely. But yeah, my point is that the triple kick Sauber team doesn't actually really help the budget situation any more than what we'd do with the template as it is, because there's so many good options, because the likes of Hülkenberg and Bortoleto and Alonso all require negative points to get that maximum rise. We're kind of spoilt for choice. I don't think we need to go down the triple Sauber route, but I think it's still an option, particularly if they look very strong in the practice sessions. But right now, as my Thursday final thoughts, I'm not going down that way. I'm going to stick with McLaren Ferrari most likely. And final thing I kind of already touched on is the Spa sprint comes up afterwards. So obviously sprint races, big points, need to be aware. And my one bit of advice for this is really to try, if you can, to hold open that extra transfer. So you've got 3 going into Spa. I know it's not always going to be possible, particularly people that are sat on a Norris build right now might need 2 transfers to move away from Norris. Move down Norris to a Piastri and then upgrade someone else somewhere else in your team, or whatever other problems or whatever you have to fix in your team. You might need to use your 2 or 3 transfers this week. But I'm just saying, if possible, keep it open. Like I say, I'm probably going to be keeping a 3rd transfer open unless the Mercedes look phenomenal. Then I'll bring them in over Ferrari. But otherwise, I'll just keep Ferrari and make changes accordingly. So yeah, just keep your mind open. The fact that Spa is up next, is a sprint weekend, potential chip usage, even though not that likely for me, but we'll see. Let's have a quick look at my actual team selection before I sign off for the evening. Okay, so here is my team coming out of Austria, going into Silverstone. Pretty bog standard moves, like I said earlier on my team selection. I'm still thinking along the same lines. Nothing really has changed that, and we haven't had the practice session, so I'm still thinking most likely Ocon, most likely Bortoleto, and run with this. Having double Sauber, pretty nice. I'm not convinced by them. I'm not convinced by Ocon. I don't think they're going to be particularly great for the high speed, but maybe. I do think, actually, I neglected to point this out earlier because it's only just come back into my mind, but I think the Haas, if I'm not mistaken, actually have an upgrade potentially this weekend. I think they do. Correct me if I'm wrong, but either way, go do your own research as well, just to back that up. I think I heard, I think it might have even been Ocon after Austria saying about an upgrade coming for this week, so that could be more benefit for going for someone like an Ocon or a Bearman this week. So these are my most likely moves, just 2 transfers. Keep that 3rd transfer open to have maximum flexibility for optimizing the budget gain in Spa, as well as optimizing the points gain for the sprint weekend. So that's most likely what I'm doing. My team 2, for those curious, because like I said, this team is 12th in the global ranking and we're trying to break into the top 10. This team 2 does have a smaller budget, so most likely I am going to drop Hadjar, and I can't actually get to Ocon. It's actually out of my price range. Maybe this is where the smaller budget for these bigger high ranked teams kind of doesn't work out so well, but I can get a nice easy straight swap to Bearman. That's probably what I'm going to be doing with my team 2. So, and whatever happened so far this season, whenever I split the difference between one driver in my team 1 and one in my team 2, team 2 has just always kind of won that coin toss, which is probably why it's doing so well. So if that's anything to go by, then Bearman is probably the right pick this weekend over Ocon, because these are my almost identical teams here. They will be almost identical again, but like I say, probably going Ocon with my team 1 unless for the reasons stated earlier on in the video, and then Bearman's going to go here in my team 2. Team 3 is just a bit of a write-off there, like 100k, so we're not going to talk about them. So those are my final thoughts. I hope you've enjoyed it. Sorry I can't do any live streaming or anything, but yeah, it is what it is. So I'll see you in a few weeks. It's basically the first part of a summer break, really, isn't it? So before Spa. So have a nice little time off after Silverstone, and I'll catch you in a few weeks for some more. So yeah, thanks and bye.